Expose Evil here. Like, share, subscribe. Today I'm doing a remake of my 100% proof Muslims worship Saturn video because I have learned more about Saturn and I learned who Saturn really is. So this is going to be a very informative video. Stay tuned and watch. Now let's start right here. The black cube of Saturn. You have it in Australia, Denmark, Manhattan, Santa Ana, as well in other places. You can see in the middle bottom, that's the Mecca. Now this black cube is all over the world for some reason because they worship the cube. This is called the black cube of Saturn. Now with geometry, you can see that in the top right hand corner, you see a cube with lines on it. Without those lines, you get a hexagram. But with geometry, you get the IXXI. As in a 6-point star for Azazel, the demon, that's their symbol. You can see it in the middle, top. Now the reason is, the cube comes from this hexagram shape that is naturally on Saturn's North Pole. Because Saturn has 6 storms that create this shape. You can see it here from the NASA photos. This is the North Pole of Saturn. Now I know some people can say that, how can you really believe NASA? So I know NASA, obviously, we know the world is ran by Satanists. They own all the big corporations. They're feeding us propaganda through the TVs. Basically in everything we know. Now the South Pole has the all-seeing eye. The Eye of Horus. This is where it comes from. You see that eye shape? This is the all-seeing eye.
Masjid al-Haram, the grand mosque in Mecca, has been Islam's most sacred mosque for over 1,000 years. This is because it is home to the Kaaba, a cube-like granite building erected by Abraham thousands of years ago. The most intriguing part of the Kaaba is the so-called black stone built into its eastern outer corner. Muslims believe that an angel revealed the stone to Abraham in order to provide him with the precise location he was to build the Kaaba. Is this just a fanciful story, or is there some truth in it?
Moon.
As the Kaaba's precise origins are unknown, it's impossible to say exactly when it was built. What is certain is that a pagan shrine existed in the area of what is now Mecca well before the rise of Islam, and had been a site of pilgrimage for several centuries. And what is the black stone? Could it be a meteorite that fell to Earth on exactly this spot, as many believe? If that was so, the stone would indeed be a sign from heaven, which could in turn have established the tradition of pilgrimage to the sun. At some point in the past, the stone broke into a number of pieces, and is now held together by a silver frame fastened to the Kaaba. However, even though it can be seen and touched by Muslims, it's impossible to examine the black stone scientifically, as it's built into the Kaaba itself. This is one reason the stone's nature and origins continue to be the cause of much debate. Some theories believe it to be an agate or a piece of volcanic glass like obsidian. Some Muslims believe that the stone predates even Abraham and fell from the sky during the time of Adam and Eve. It's also said that at that time the stone was not black at all, but dazzling white.
Now you can see them circle the Mecca, just like the rings of Saturn will circle the planet. They go around in a circle, okay? Just like the rings will go around the planet. Does that make, it's really crazy. And then the Bible reveals the name Saturn to us. Now to this part, you have to listen very carefully. I'm going to start at Acts 7:41. This is when the Hebrews were in the desert and they didn't know what happened to Moses because he went to Mount Sinai. So at that time, they made a calf and offered a sacrifice to the idol, rejoicing in the works of their hands. So remember, they just left Egypt. Okay? Just left Egypt. Now I'm going to pause it real fast and I'm going to show you something. A History of Phallic Worship. Phallic is a penis. By Richard Payne Knight. Page 120. I'm going to skip to the bottom. He's talking about Isis and he's talking about Horus, okay? He says, the Greeks who represented the mother under the form of a beautiful woman naturally represented the son under the form of a beautiful boy. But the people who represented the mother under the form of a cow would as naturally represent the son under the form of a calf. Now, isn't it obvious? They went back to Egyptian Osiris or Horus worship. In Acts 7:41, it says they made the calf. And then in Acts 7:42, but God turned away from them and gave them over to the worship of heavenly bodies. This is astrology. As it is written in the book of the prophets, did you offer me slain beasts and sacrifices 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel? You have taken up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your god Rephan, the idols you made to worship. Therefore I will send you into exile beyond Babylon. Now check it out. Rephan, or sometimes spelled Remphan, is another name for Saturn. Here we go. This has Hitchcock, Smith's, Easton's, bunch of Bible dictionaries and encyclopedias. Hitchcock's Bible Dictionary names. They don't have Smith's Bible Dictionary right here. Remphan. Acts 7:43. And Chewin, Amos 5:26. Chewin is another name, have been supposed to be the names of the idol worshipped secretly by the Israelites in the wilderness. Difficulty has been occasioned by this corresponding occurrence of two names so wholly different in sound. The most reasonable opinion seems to be that Chewin was a Hebrew or Semitic name, and Rephan an Egyptian equivalent, substituted by the LXX. This idol corresponded probably to Saturn or Moloch. The mention of Chewin or Rephan as worshipped in the desert shows that this idolatry was part of at least that of foreigners, and no doubt of those settled in Lower Egypt. Okay? There you go, the Saturn. And if you know Greek mythology, Saturn's also called Kronos. Kronos is the father of Zeus. Zeus is the father of Hercules, Dionysus, Bacchus. These are all cults. People have cults for these people. Now, let me show you who Moloch and Saturn really are, who Osiris really is. So now that we know that Moloch and Saturn are one and the same as Chewin and Remphan, now let's see who let's see who Moloch really is. Now, chapter 4, section 2, Justifications by Works, Alexander Hislop, Two Babylons. It was a pamphlet in 1858, and through the years it was added on to, and more sources were put into it. And this is the 1916 version. You go down a few paragraphs from there, and you get this red letters. It says, the real character of the God whom the papacy has set up for worship of its deluded devotees, Catholics, there is nothing in the least strange about it. The God is Moloch, the god of barbarity and blood. Moloch signifies king, and Nimrod was the first after the flood that violated the patriarchal system and set up as king over his fellows. Now, king, if you read down here, Moloch was nothing. There was never nothing bad. It always meant king. But he says it right here. Now the well-known rites associated with the name Moloch have made it for ages a synonym for all that is most revolting in the hearts of humanity. Over and over the scourgings, there were also slashings and cuttings of the flesh required as propitiatory rites on the part of his worshippers. In the Solomon celebration of mysteries, says Julius Firmicus, all things in order had to be done, which the youth either did or suffered at his death. Osiris was cut into pieces, therefore, to imitate his fate, so far as living men might do so, they were required to cut and wound their own bodies. Okay? Remember, it says right here, Osiris was cut into pieces. Sorry. Now here, he goes on to talk about Saturn. He even says Pluto is a synonym for Saturn, which means the hidden one. The hidden one would be Nimrod, because he is Saturn, and he is Osiris. And the Freemasons like to call him Harem Abif. Now if you read here, it says he's the hidden one, and you go down a little bit more, and it says right here, butchered to make a Roman holiday, when it is remembered that Saturn himself, or Kronos, was cut in pieces. It is easy to see how the idea arose of offering a welcome sacrifice to him by setting men to cut one another in pieces on his birthday. So, you see it? Does that make sense now? They were in the wilderness, the Hebrews. They left Egypt. They were there for a while. They didn't know what happened to Moses, so they returned to Horus and Osiris worship through the calf. And God came down and said, you worshipped Saturn and Moloch. You didn't worship me. We know Saturn and Moloch are Osiris and Nimrod. Originally Nimrod. So, obviously, they worshipped the Babylon mystery religion. Just like the Muslims. So you can see why they have the black cube of Saturn at the Mecca. Because they're just another mystery religion.